Yo, it's RT here with itsfightingstupid.blogspot.com. I'm just going to bust off some UFC 135 predictions. First on the card, we got James Tahuna taking on Ricardo Romero. I like James Tahuna to lose this fight, probably by submission. Ricardo Romero's 1-1 in the UFC. He's got a victory over Seth Petrozelli, as well as a closely contested decision to Kyle Kingsbury that he came up short in. I think his game's a little more versatile. He's got good boxing. He's got good submissions. James Tahuna mostly with the wall and stall. He's got, decent power in his hands, but his game's not very versatile. I like Ricardo Romero here. Moving up the card, we got Takeya Mizugaki, the intelligent sniper, taking on the Apache Kid Cole Escovedo. Cole Escovedo's got a decent guard game, but he doesn't really have much else. Takeya Mizugaki's fairly well-rounded. He's got heavy hands, good ground and pound. He's been in some absolute wars in the WEC, including fights against Uriah Faber and Miguel Torres. I like Takeya Mizugaki here, probably by TKO in the third, if not a really one-sided decision. Moving up the card, we've got Junior Assunção taking on Eddie Yang, the Filipino phenom. Rafael Assunção is the brother to Junior Assunção. They train together in Atlanta, Georgia. They employ a similar game, though Junior has more of an emphasis on capoeira and the wild strikes. I like him here. I think Eddie is coming off a very big victory over Joe Soto in the Palace Fighting Championships. I don't think he's going to have what it takes to take out Junior. Junior is a very aggressive, very wild fighter, and I think we're going to see Eddie Yang get some mid to strikes probably in the third. Moving up the card, we got the Spike TV portion of the fights here. We got Tim the Barbarian Bosch taking on Nick the Promise Ring. Nick Ring is a tough veteran. He's had over 30 kickboxing fights. He's from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. In Tim the Barbarian Bosch, he's taking on a veteran who's trained out of AMC Pancration with Matt Hume. He's got good wrestling credentials. He was a Division I All-American 4 years in a row at Rutgers. I believe it was Rutgers. I might have to check my facts on that. In this fight, I like Tim Bosch by ground and pound. I think he's bigger. I think he's stronger. I don't think we're going to see Nick Ring able to employ the stalling tactics he used against Ricky Fukuda. I like Tim Bosch here. Moving up the card, we've got Aaron Riley taking on Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson won the last season in Tough. He trains out of the Knuckleheads Gym in Ventura, California. He's got decent power in his hands. He's aggressive and he's a hard worker. But Aaron Riley's a journeyman, tough guy, training out of Jackson's. He's fought absolutely everybody, been there, done that. And when he fights green fighters, he tends to expose them. I think this is pretty deep water to be dropping a guy making his UFC debut in. I like Aaron Riley here, probably by decision. Moving on to the main card, we've got Ben Rothwell taking on Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt is 1-6 in his last 7. He's in the UFC more due to contractual obligation as opposed to any of his merit earned in fighting. That said, he does have victories over Mirko Cro Cop and TK Kosaka. In Ben Rothwell, he's taking on a guy who's fought forever. He's a tough guy, but he employs mostly brawling tactics. But here, I think we're going to see him go to the ground. I think we're going to see him take Mark Hunt down, submit him, as tends to be the fashion with defeating Mark Hunt in the first round, probably due to an Americana, maybe a Kimura. But I think it's going to get pretty ugly before it gets good for Mark Hunt. Moving up the card, we've got Takanori Gomi taking on Nate Diaz. Takanori Gomi was at one time the #1 lightweight in the world, fighting over in Pride. Looked awesome. Had a good versatile game that employed wrestling and striking. He uses wrestling to make his striking more successful. His heavy hands resulted in a lot of spectacular knockouts and great highlights. He's also famous for that one wild fight in Las Vegas against Nick Diaz, which saw him brawl all over the cage, only to end up with a crazy Gogo Plata submission for Nick Diaz, only to have that victory turned over due to the ridiculous amount of THC in his bloodstream. In Nick Diaz's brother, we're going to probably see something similar, though I think what's going to happen here is we're going to see more clinch work from Nate Diaz, less wild brawling, and I think we're going to see a submission probably in the third round. Nate Diaz doesn't have the power in his hands that Nick Diaz does, but he does have a more impressive clinch game. He's got better trips, better takedowns, and I think he's more dangerous from his guard. So if it ends up in any of those positions, I look for Nate Diaz to have the advantage. I look for Takanori Gomi to fade late in the fight, Diaz to win by submission. Moving up the card, we got Travis Brown taking on Rob Broughton. Rob Broughton is another guy who's in more for the international expansion as opposed to his record. In Travis Brown, he's taking on a young hot prospect who's training out of Alliance MMA in San Diego, California. Travis Brown's got a really good athleticism. He moves really well for a heavyweight. He's got heavy hands. He's got good versatile strikes. Rob Broughton, I think, has been brought in to be a punching bag here. I think we see Travis Brown light him up, TKO him in the second, and that's only because Broughton's got a really good chin. Moving up to the co-main event of the evening, we've got Josh Koscheck taking on Matt Hughes. This is going to be a good fight. This is the first fight for Josh Koscheck since December and his loss to George St. Pierre, where he broke his orbital bone. So that could be an X factor in the fight. Are you going to be the same coming off a serious injury like that required a lot of surgery and a lot of time off? He's taking the fight on short notice. That said, Matt Hughes, one of the greatest welterweights of all time, he's kind of got one foot out the door. Mrs. Hughes said she'd like to see him retire. He's already made mention of it. He realizes that there's an expiry date on his career. This is the last fight on his contract. Is his head all the way in the game? That said, sounds like Matt Hughes has been using a kind of road warrior mentality with his training. He's been training in Granite City, Illinois, as well as Salt Lake City, Utah, as well as getting some rounds in with Pat Miletich. In this fight, with the way their skills match up, I like Josh Koscheck here. I think he's a little bit more committed to his hands. He's more dangerous, and when you have to make someone respect your hands, that makes your wrestling game more dangerous. When you have to have your hands up, you're going to expose your hips. Josh Koscheck's got those wrestling credentials to put Matt Hughes on his back. I think if he doesn't keep it on his feet, he pounds him out from the ground and pound position. I like Josh Koscheck by TKO in the second. Moving up to the main event of the evening, we've got Rampage Jackson taking on UFC light heavyweight champion Johnny Bones Jones. John Bones Jones is 13-1, with the lone loss being a disqualification for a downward elbow fight, which he had handily against Matt Hamill rather. In Rampage Jackson, he's taken on a very tough guy. He was 2-1 in his last 3, and he was only one punch away from winning that lone loss against Rashad Evans. It's a great fight for one reason. Rampage Jackson is always dangerous, and it sounds like he's invested, and it sounds like he's ready to get it on. He's focused. He spent north of $1 million on this camp training at the Muscle Farm facility in Denver, Colorado. He's brought back in his Wolf Slayer trainers. Looks hungry, looks on point. In Jon Jones, he's taken on probably the best young prospect in the game right now. Jon Jones has a dynamic striking game to go with awesome trips and good Roman Greco wrestling credentials. So, how do they match up here? I think Jon Jones is going to be able to keep Rampage off balance with the distance strikes, and provided he doesn't get clipped with one of those huge uppercuts or right hooks, I think we'll see Jon Jones probably punish Rampage for the duration of the fight. I like Jon Jones by decision. This has been your UFC 135 picks with RT. It's fightingstupid.blogspot.com. Enjoy the fights.